Sanung kumutane, yaide. So zadi magana Hausa ko Turanci? Hausa. Okay. All right. I'll speak in English for the rest of you. But good morning, all. It's great to be here. As I was introduced, I am Nigerian by birth and by upbringing, just not by passport. And that's not because I didn't try. I think I'm the only person in the world who was denied Nigerian citizenship. But we'll get there. All right. So good morning. It's great to be here today with all of you. And I'm sure some of you are thinking, why are we having a presentation on the Nigerian power sector at a tech conference? If you think of the Nigerian power sector, I don't think you usually think of innovation, technology, because the Nigerian power sector is mostly working with technology from the last century, actually 2 centuries ago. And that's actually why it's not working very well. But what I'm going to be talking to you about today is, first of all, some of the challenges we have because of that system, that outdated system we have, but more excitedly, the opportunities we now have with off-grid energy, which is where the technology and innovation is coming and where all of you can play a part. So I only have 15 minutes. Obviously, the power sector is something very big and important to Nigeria, but I'll have to rush through this a bit. But I just want to start with a question. How many of you, for the last week, have had uninterrupted power from the grid? For the whole week? Nobody, right? Nobody. Anybody? Maybe somebody who lives in Aso Villa might have it. Anyone, but no one, okay. So this is the problem. This is, in most of the rest of the world, this isn't something people even have to worry about, because power is power. It's something from a century ago, people have just had power. So this is a problem in Nigeria that we really need to solve, because it's a problem we really shouldn't be worried about in the 21st century. And we're almost 20 years into the 21st century. All right, so let's go. Can you move it forward? Again? So I'm going to start with the challenges. Okay, so if you look at this slide, I hope you guys can see the data. I know you're data people. We roughly have in Nigeria 14,000 megawatts of installed capacity. So if you look at that compared to some of our peers, and these are not, sort of small countries in West Africa, but these are companies around the world that Nigeria wants to be seen among them, we're actually not too bad. I mean, Bangladesh is only a bit ahead of us. Vietnam is right there. These are countries that are kind of growing a lot. So this seems okay. So why is the problem so bad? Well, let's look at the next slide. This is where the problem is. Even though we have almost 14,000 megawatts of installed capacity, for one reason or the other, mostly because of lack of investment, outdated technology, etc., only about 3,000 megawatts actually gets to the end user, to you, and the companies, the individuals, the households around Nigeria. And 3,000 megawatts for a country of almost 200 million people is just ridiculously low. To put that in perspective, if every single Nigerian today lit a candle at the same time, we would generate as much power as the entire national grid is delivering. Right? Think about that. That's how bad it is, okay? So let's go forward. So what does that mean for us? What it means for us is that there are 120 million Nigerians who are either off the grid completely or have less than 4 hours of power a day. 120 million people. That's more than the population of Ethiopia, the next largest country in Africa. It's the population of 10 other West African countries combined. This is a huge number. 120 million Nigerians do not have reliable power, and this is unacceptable. Let's go forward. The most important thing, though, is, and it was referenced by Funke and others, without power, some of these other things we're talking about, whether it's broadband access or even just education, can't work in Nigeria if we don't have power. Power is the foundation. If you don't have power, you can do everything Sheyi said we should do, and education will still not work. And it's because of power that on almost every socioeconomic metric in the world, other than religion, Nigeria is one of the poorest performers. Whether it's healthcare, competitiveness, insecurity, environment, education, food security, everything is worse in Nigeria because we do not have power. So if we do not fix power, we shouldn't focus on anything else, because it really won't get to where it needs to go. So power is really the foundation and what we need to fix first. So that's the bad side. Okay, so let's move to the positive side, because I know you guys are techies, so you're always thinking about how to change the world, how to make things better. So that's what we're going to talk about now. So what is the opportunity? So let's go forward. Okay, so first of all, the challenges. Again, this is what I've already summarized, I've already talked about, but at the bottom here you see a statistic that is also surprising. In Nigeria, it's estimated that we have 60 million diesel generators of various sizes that are currently what is being used to address our energy access gap. 60 million generators. So that actually shows there's an opportunity here because people are actually buying and servicing and fueling these generators. But it also means that we have one of the most uncompetitive, one of the most inefficient power systems in the world when most of our power is basically delivered house by house, company by company, but by inefficient diesel generators, which really haven't had that much technological innovation for several decades. And that's what we're actually running our economy on. It just doesn't work. Thankfully, this huge energy gap also means there is a big opportunity. So first of all, statistics show that Nigerians are already spending $20 billion on alternative energy. So that's mostly for generators, for diesel, for petrol, but it's also for candles, for batteries, for torch lights, for kerosene lanterns, for charcoal, for firewood. You add all that up, Nigerians are already spending $20 billion a year. That's bigger than the economies of many African countries. And that's what we're spending on alternative power. And what we spend on grid power is only $2 billion. So the crazy thing is that if the grid got it right, there's so much money they could make. And these discos and gencos could all be incredibly profitable. But because of regulation, because of all the legacies that they deal with, they're still stuck with only earning $2 billion a year of revenue, while the generator guys and everyone else is making all of the money. So now, what we need to do is we need to make sure that the solution is not the diesel generator guys, but it's the new innovations that are coming into the market with cleaner energy, whether it's gas, whether it's solar, whether it's hydro, whether it's biomass. And so if you look at these, the Rural Electrification Agency estimates that there is a $10 billion opportunity just for mini-grids. Okay, and I'll talk a bit more about mini-grids in a bit. There's also an estimate there's a market for over 10 million solar home systems in Nigeria. Again, I'll talk about what that technology is in a bit. But in the rest of the world, the solar home system sector has been around for almost 10 years, and around 3 million units have been sold globally. And just in Nigeria, we have a market for over 10 million. So these numbers are really big, and there's a reason why all the international players in off-grid energy are now coming into Nigeria. And then finally, what's also very interesting and makes the economics very exciting for entrepreneurs is that the typical Nigerian household is willing to pay 3.5 times the cost of power than they do in India, which is another country that has a lot of people who are off-grid. Same thing in East Africa. They're willing to pay in Nigeria 2 times the typical East African household. So when you start to talk about these things in international conferences on power, people actually just drop whatever they're doing in India, drop whatever they're doing in East Africa, and they jump on the next plane to Nigeria, because this is where the opportunity is. Please go forward. So this now provides you with the 5 segments that are developing in Nigeria's off-grid energy sector. So on the sort of larger side, you have what's called independent power producers. And of course, I think this is something you're all familiar with. But basically, these are companies that are generating power either with solar or with gas. And then the power is used for particular institutions, for particular communities. It doesn't go into the grid. If it's above 20 megawatts, it has to go into the grid. And then you start dealing with all the wahala with NBET, with transmission capacity, etc. So anything under 20 megawatts, you can generate it and distribute it directly where you are and create a small utility. And so some of these utilities are operating in places like the Ariaria Market in Aba. There's one on Bonny Island in River State. And there's another one called Nesco in the Plateau where I grew up, where since 1929, 7 local governments in Plateau State have had 24/7 power for 90 years. 90 years. How many of you knew that there was a part of Nigeria where they don't know what a generator is? Okay, see, nobody knows about this company. And the reason is because they stay under the radar. Because if they talk too much, the regulators will come and wahala will start. So, no, stay back. We're not done with that slide yet. We're going to stay on this slide for a while. Okay, so then the next area is commercial and industrial. And this is where either solar on the smaller end or gas on the bigger end, companies are now taking private businesses off the grid and powering them separately. And so many, many bank branches around Nigeria already, and you may not even know this because you can't see it, but are now off the grid and are using diesel generators as a very small backup for when the sun isn't shining bright enough, which doesn't happen that often in Nigeria, obviously. But so FCMB, who was one of the sponsors here, is actually one of the leaders on this, and many of the FCMB branches in Lagos that you go to are actually run by solar. You just don't know it. Sterling Bank is another one, and there's other banks that are coming on. Petrol stations is another one that's happening. There's one on Leleki Express, I think, that you all pass here, the big yellow petrol station. It's completely run by solar. Most Total stations are now moving to solar. Oando stations are moving to solar. But even more than that, factories and so on are just cutting off the grid and powering themselves with either solar or gas. And they're able to do this now because of changing regulation that is slowly allowing this disruption to happen in the energy space so that we no longer have to only take power from the disco, which has been our major problem. The next, nope, stay on that slide. Go back. The next segment is mini grids. How many of you have heard of mini grids? Very few of you. Okay. So mini grids are probably the most exciting of all of these. And mini grids are now popping up all over rural areas of Nigeria. And what these are small, maybe 60, 70 kilowatt solar plants that now are connected to a new, a small transmission network, a distribution network, and smart metering. And they're basically set up in rural villages that are completely off the grid and that for decades have been in complete darkness when the sun goes down. And immediately the mini grid is in place. These communities are transformed. Children can study at night. Vaccines can be stored in refrigeration. Small shops can stay open longer. Barber shops can, cut your hair without, can shave your head without needing a generator. Food can be stored. Agricultural produce can be processed. And so communities that were basically sort of dying economically are completely transformed. And one of the most famous ones is in Bisanti, Niger State. It's run by a company called GVE, which was founded by students from Futo when they were still students. And they've put these all over the country, but in Bisanti, Niger State is the one that's sort of looked at the most. And people are moving from Mina to this little village because in Mina they have unreliable power. And in this village in the middle of nowhere, they have 24/7 reliable power that they happily pay for before using. So it's all pay as you go. And so there's now a program from the Rural Electrification Agency, which is a government agency that in the last 2 years has just totally transformed the spectrum of rural electrification in Nigeria. They've been the ones driving the regulatory changes, driving the donor funding and everything. And through their work, they're trying to get 10,000 mini grids constructed across Nigeria. So the next couple of years, every one of you will probably know of a village that is now powered by a mini grid. And you may actually decide to leave Lagos and go to that village because you can now sit in that village because you'll have reliable power. You can do whatever it is that techies do. As long as Funke is giving you bandwidth, you'll be fine, right? Because you'll have power. And in Lagos, the largest city in Africa, you don't have power, but in the village you will. All right, so that's the beauty of mini grids. Then the next area of the next segment is what we call the solar energy systems. And this is a segment in the off-grid energy space that is unique to Nigeria. The reason it is developed here is that in many cases, in most parts of the world where you have off-grid communities, they're rural. In Nigeria, even here in the biggest city in Africa, we have massive power problems. And so that means you have much more high density, higher volume needs of higher load need for power. And so there's this whole segment developing just in Nigeria where you can now get 3 to 5 kilowatts of solar in a simple box. And then the companies that deliver this actually don't make you pay for the system. You actually just pay for the power as you use it. So the upfront cost is expensive, but now they're making it possible so that you can either power your home, power your pharmacy, power your clinic with solar without a big upfront capital expenditure. And you can just pay for the power over time. And then finally, the last segment is the solar home system segment. How many of you have heard of a solar home system? Probably you've heard of Lumos, right? Lumos, who's heard of Lumos? Lumos, the yellow box? Okay. So what the solar home system is very exciting because it puts solar power in your hands, and it's so simple. You basically get a single panel and then a single box, and in the box is everything, all the battery, the inverter, all the software, everything is there. You pay with your phone. you pay as you go power, and just with that single thing, you can now power some lights, you can charge your phones, you can power a computer, you can power a TV, a fan, and some other things, and it basically instantly means you no longer have to go out every day and turn on your diesel generator. All right, and so it's safer, it's less expensive, and obviously it's environmentally friendly. And the solar home system segment is the one that's probably booming the most. Lumos, which is the market leader, now has 100,000 customers in Nigeria. Now, that doesn't seem like a lot in our context, but think about that this industry didn't exist 2 years ago in Nigeria. Then also think about that the typical distribution company in Nigeria only has 200 to 300 metered paying customers. And Lumos in 2 years already has 100,000. Right? So these companies, all of the companies across the spectrum, are completely disrupting the power sector as we know it. And my prediction is that the distribution companies that we all grew up with are all going to go the way of Nitel if they don't partner with them and use the technology that these guys are using and then work together. The ones that try and go their own way as they're doing now, within 2 to 3 years, may just disappear. Now you can move forward. So now, for any of you who wants to get into this sector, the beautiful thing is there is a massive, fast-growing ecosystem to support you. On the donor side, there's almost $500 million of grants that are waiting for companies that are deploying systems. So there's a lot of money here. There's also a lot of technical assistance available. It really is the new exciting sector in Nigeria that all the donors, all the investors, everybody is focusing on. So if you're not already focusing on it, this is actually where you need to start thinking about. And you can think about changing Nigeria rather than running to Canada. So I'm Canadian, but I'd rather be here. It's very cold there. All right, it's very cold there, and whatever you do in Canada doesn't change the world. What you do in Nigeria, just this, changes the world, okay? So think about that. All right, now, so we're almost done. I think I'm within time. Let me just talk a bit about my company. So my company is called All On, and it's funded by Shell. You might find it odd that an oil company is funding the investment in businesses that are actually trying to reduce the use of diesel and petrol, right? But that's what we're doing. And part of it is because even the oil companies now know that we're in an energy transition. And by 2050, oil and gas may not actually be important anymore. And so in Nigeria, we need to get on board with that because we're still stuck on that as if that industry will last for the next couple of 100 years. So we're funded by Shell, and we are primarily impact investors. So if you are going to start a company in this space, we can invest in you as early as the angel stage, or even before that, ideation stage. We can support you to take your business all the way through until it grows and takes off and scales and accesses those hundreds of millions of dollars, okay? That's what we primarily do. Secondly, we actually invest in funds. We realize that the off-grid energy sector in Nigeria needs tens of billions of dollars to take off. We obviously don't have enough of that. So we basically invest in funds so that we can get other people also putting in money in this space in Nigeria. And so our maybe a couple of $1 million will bring in another 50 to help invest in this space in Nigeria. And then finally, we have a small grant portfolio, and we use these grants to invest in initiatives that are trying to grow the industry. So it can be around improving regulation, it can be around research, it can be around capacity development, and so on. So that's what we do, and that is what I get out of bed to do every day. And the beauty of the work we're doing, and everybody in this space, is that we know that every time a household or a business gets reliable, clean energy that's affordable and sustainable, it actually changes their lives immediately. So it's something that you feel the impact every day. And what keeps me up at night is that we're not doing it fast enough. And that's because we need more of you to be working on it with us. So now finally, what can you do? In the end of the day, the on-grid energy space, okay, go forward. The on-grid energy space is, like I said, relatively, it's not technologically advanced. It's basically using technology from the last century and the century before that. But the on-grid energy space is as much about technology, about fintech, and that kind of thing than it is actually about power. And so it's actually an exciting space that all of you, whether you're in fintech, whether you're in hardware, whether you're in software, any other aspect of the tech sector, you can actually get excited about and play a role. So a lot of companies have already developed, but there's still not that much innovation that is specific to Nigeria. And so you guys are here. So you guys can either partner with the companies that are there and help them improve the way they do payments that makes sense in Nigeria. Help them develop productive use options so that people are using this solar power to generate income rather than just to consume, and so on and so forth. So there's so many opportunities for all of you to get on board. And we need all of you because the energy revolution that needs to happen in Nigeria is the revolution that we need to make this country take off, so that when in 5 years from now, 10 years from now, when someone comes in and says, how many of you want to leave the country tonight? Nobody will raise their hands. Thank you.